Don't hesitate. Don't wait. Just get your guy, Commanders. It's that simple.
Yeah, everything you need to get the deal done is in place. All that's left is getting Mikey reunited with Danny.
Well, look, not the other Dan Quinn. That's who he's talking about. Nick, hit the intro.
Hail to the Commanders! It's the Commanders Squad. Everything Washington Commanders every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the heart of the nation's capital. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Rally the burgundy and gold. The Commanders Squad Show starts now.
Anthony Armstrong, David Harrison, Nick Ashew. We are brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. If I was a betting man, which I am, I would say this, guys. The Commanders really want Mike McDaniel as their offensive coordinator, and they would be stupid not to. The problem is there's a lot of other teams that probably look at Mike McDaniel as an offensive coordinator bare minimum, and this is where we are now. We've hit the offseason. We get to at least look like we spent, let's be honest, guys, we've all been in off-season mode for what feels like 100 years. I'd argue 2 months, but like really that's kind of where it's gotten to. But now we have the openings. Now we have the progress. Now we have the calendar. While playoff games are going on for other teams, it's about giving the Commanders the stability and the coaching staff and the roster as the months go by to actually build something that has a level of longevity that they really need. Offensive coordinator is massively important. We're going to look at, obviously, Mike McDaniel today and why he fits. We're going to look at who would benefit, whether they're on the roster or not, being a part of that Mike McDaniel offense. And then, of course, there is the other side of the football, too. A lot of defensive coordinator names that are being thrown around for the Commanders as well. And this is really important, David. This is a situation where if you're the Commanders and you've got a young quarterback that's heading into year 3, this is the offseason leading into year 3. And I'm going to say that a bunch more times because I'm still trying to wrap my head around the fact that Jaden Daniels is going to be heading into year 3. But you've got to get offensive continuity because quarterbacks lose that ability to grow and maximize their talents if they're constantly learning a new system year after year after year, and they can't afford to let something like that happen with Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, and I think that the continuity that you want, obviously the easy way to get that continuity is consistent personnel, right? And that's why people love offensive head coaches, because if your head coach is your offensive coordinator, you don't have to worry about him getting hired away by somebody else, and therefore you have the continuity already built in. So when you hire a defensive coach like Dan Quinn, that's where the problem or the concern always comes up is what if you do so well that your offensive coordinator ends up getting hired away by another team. I would always push back and argue that's a great problem to have. I welcome that problem every single season if we can have it, because that means you're doing a lot of really good things. But that doesn't necessarily discount the fact that, yes, changing your offensive coordinator can be a problem. I think really, though, it becomes a problem only if you're talking about changing not just the person in the headset, but you're also changing the philosophy of how this player plays. And that's where I'm not concerned about continuity with Mike McDaniel, because one thing when you go through Coach McDaniel's history that he's always been really good at is understanding his quarterbacks. That's the first thing he does, is get to know his quarterback. What's your comfort zone? What's in your wheelhouse? What are your superpowers, to steal a Dan Quinn phrase? And how can I best help you maximize them? Now, once I understand that and I understand how to coach you for who you are, then we can talk about expanding. Then we can talk about building. Then we can talk about doing all these other things that we wanted to see Cliff Kingsbury do with Jaden. And to a certain extent, because of health, he didn't have the opportunities, but you also don't see the progression of his scheme just overall. And that's where the problem came in with him. But with Mike, you're not going to have those problems, at least given his history, because that's his superpower, so to speak, is not just having the offensive mind, but understanding how to connect the schematics with the person, because as Bruce Arians always says, it's about the Jimmies and Joes, not the X's and O's, Anthony.
You know, one of the beautiful things about Mike McDaniel and how he's been with 13 years with Kyle Shanahan, that he's sat here and been directly in the process of creating some plays. When he moved from San Francisco and then went down to Miami, everybody was wondering, how are you going to work with Tua Tagovailoa? What are you going to do with this? And I was wondering, I'm like, dude, you got some of the fastest receivers. You got some Ferraris. Then on the flip side, you have a quarterback whose arm is kind of mid at best. He's really accurate, but he doesn't have the deep speed. Everybody, I'm thinking, how are you going to get him the rock? He literally retooled an offense. He designed an offense to attack the zones in the defenses differently. Instead of, hey, normally it would be hit here, we're going to hit it here, and you can do it faster because they're really fast and they're really accurate. He can create new things. So he's somebody that I see walking into this position to where you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to worry about him having continuity with the players on the roster because he's already shown you how to work with Deebo Samuel, right? He can take what you have and then be like, oh, he's really good at this. I'm going to put him in these positions. Look at what they've done in San Francisco, those same players. He designed plays for that. So I honestly, I see it as somebody that comes in and it's more about continuity of understanding how they want the building to be run, like the vibe, the culture, if you will. And you talk about trust. You talk about knowing somebody. I mean, he has a relationship with Dan Quinn. He has a relationship with Adam Peters. He has a relationship with players on the roster. And he even has a relationship with Anthony Lynn. That's all over the building. So if anybody's going to vouch for him, I don't see, assistant coaches trying to go rogue if this guy comes in. Like, you don't have to feel like it's somebody trying to give a lot of bravado. Mike's coming in here to put people in the right position. He's going to make every position coach look good. He's going to make every player look good. And it makes a lot of sense. It makes the most sense that they got to go and open up the bag to get this guy in the building, Nick.
And listen, this is a name we've certainly been talking about for a while that a lot of people have been throwing out there. And it doesn't mean that he's the only great candidate, but the ties just make a ton of sense. And the offensive mind makes sense. And the desire to run the football more with the guys you have in that backfield, if Chris Rodriguez is back as part of it, that all kind of ties it. But there's a deeper thing to this too. And, everybody knows the story of Mike McDaniel and, getting sober and really turning his life around when he said, like, heading down a path that was not good. I mean, he was not in a good place, and Dan Quinn was a big part of that. And I think that connection runs far deeper than anything that's football related. But, if you're Mike McDaniel, I can't get in the guy's head, so I don't know what his thoughts are in terms of desire to maybe still try to find a head coaching job or be an offensive coordinator. And if it is, do you want a fresh start or do you want to go to a place that you do have some level of comfort? Now, he was in the Commanders organization when it was far different from ownership all the way down. But having Dan Quinn there and having the familiarity of at least the area and, being out in Ashburn and some of those things, that could matter. I don't know whether that matters, but that's something that could matter for him. And look, the Lions are certainly being thrown around as a team that could be a fit for him. And look, the Lions have a lot of talent on that offense, but you get to work with a younger quarterback in Jane Daniels and a team that's got a lot of cap space that can really sort of mold and bring you pieces that you might really be interested in. But I really do think that if I was to kind of look at this and, set odds as to where he would go, I would make the Commanders the favorite if it's offensive coordinator based because it runs deeper than just football. And I think that really does matter, David. And a lot of people, look, we forget it all the time. I think everybody, like, these are humans that are choosing the next step of their life, their career, these types of things, whether it's free agency, whether it's coaches, whatever it is. And that connection with Dan Quinn for Mike McDaniel, I would guess, again, I'm just guessing here, but I would guess that does have some sort of factor and would play into this for him.
Yeah, I mean, all the connections are there for obvious reasons, and that's why he's come to the top of this list for everybody here. And it's also why the Washington Commanders are at the top of the list for everybody talking about Mike McDaniel. Even as Detroit Lions fans try to speak into existence him coming to work with Dan Campbell, they know that the Washington Commanders really make the most sense. Even as Tampa Bay Buccaneers fans try to take a very vague, not even real report from an ESPN reporter and say that that's a sign that he's going to go work under Todd Bowles and for the Buccaneers. Like, they know the reality is Mike McDaniel makes the most sense with Dan Quinn, with Jaden Daniels, with the Washington Commanders. But just because it makes the most sense doesn't mean it's always going to happen, right? I remember there was a year where the New England Patriots ran through their entire regular season schedule and everybody said, okay, they're just going to win the Super Bowl unless they get injured. And they didn't suffer any major injuries, and they still didn't win the Super Bowl. So, again, what makes sense isn't always what ends up happening. So that's where the nervousness comes in, and that's where it's like everybody's refreshing Twitter. Everybody on our side is checking their phones like, hey, do I have service? Like, where's the text message from somebody saying Mike McDaniel just landed in Dulles and doing all this other stuff, right? Like, everybody's waiting because until it happens, it's not a given. It's not a guarantee. And, the longer it takes, everybody's nervous. But I think the important thing for everybody to remember, and I've been sending this to our everyday or all access people here the last couple of days, is typically when you look at the coaching hire cycle, the head coaching jobs get filled out first. Then the coordinator positions start to get filled out. So it's not to say that there won't be any coordinator hires and hiring news and all that kind of stuff before all the head coaching positions are filled. but there is a kind of a process to this, because even as coordinators, like even, Mike McDaniel, like unless you're looking at it and saying Dan Quinn is the only dude I would ever work for in this situation, you never know what's going to pop up. You never know what situation is going to arise. I mean, not for nothing, 72 hours ago, the Miami Dolphins job wasn't available until Coach Harbaugh got fired coincidentally.
Until Harbaugh was available. Yep.
You know what I mean? So things can change in this landscape in a heartbeat. And I think that what any coach doesn't want to do is be the coach to commit to a job and then pull out of a job. I know it's happened before, but you also see what happens to those guys' reputations when those types of things happen.
If you're watching on YouTube, my cat just jumped out.
I was going to say we got
a raccoon hat, man.
Listen, she's got a tail. Listen, it's the off season now. We're less. She's stepping over the cord of my light. There's a chance that fall. I didn't know she was up here in the studio. She was hiding under something. My cat just likes to jump in my lap in the middle of this. My dog knows. Like I know our dog stays outside the studio. I don't have to worry about it. But my cat could be anywhere. And then this time our cat decided to just jump in my lap. There he goes. There's a raccoon tail that just jumped all over this. But she also told me, guys, don't worry, that Mike McDaniel is her choice too, Anthony. So it's fine. Like even my cat is a big fan of Mike McDaniel. So
good. Little Garfield there got the right mindset going on.
He doesn't like lasagna though. I tried.
Good. Keep her off of the pasta. Look, I'm gonna say this. I know this much. Since Mike was here before with the organization in the past, I know there's some nostalgia that's gonna come up there. Right? It's gonna feel like something. Like you're back where you were before. Hey, two of your homeboys have been offensive coordinators in that same building with that same organization. You have an opportunity to go and do something that they haven't had the ability to do, at least in that building, right? So you can go and have some unfinished business, kind of write your own, your own history, your own legacy of sorts in this position. And then the second thing is he's a minority candidate, right? So you have your successor in line. You don't necessarily have to go outside and go, give another interview. And I know that's the Rooney Rule, and we shouldn't be trying to skirt it, but he's a minority candidate technically. So he fits the bill. You can kind of pass it on if there is success. So everybody talks about what do you do if we have success? Hey, if you have success, you celebrate your Super Bowl, and if the coach leaves, you cheer him on. That's how it goes, guys. You enjoy the success that you can have with this. And I will say this: I was throwing around. What other place? There's a team up the road that now obviously doesn't have a head coach, and I think John Harbaugh is going to decide how fast this cycle goes, unless somebody just says I'm going to just jump the gun. But the Baltimore Ravens, it's like it'd be interesting to go and try to go and play with Lamar, have Lamar as your quarterback. But shoot, you could have made that trade a couple of years ago, and he didn't do it. But then you also have an aging Derrick Henry, so that's not the most ideal situation. I think on paper it looks pretty good, but I don't know. I think you say a little bit further south on 495, man, and you'll be all right.
It's funny when you look at the Ravens and you mentioned Derrick Henry. I still think this guy's just ageless, and I feel like he's just going to play till he's 40. It's not going to be the case, but like every time you think Derrick Henry's gone past that point, you see more from him. John in the YouTube comments too mentioning Brian Dable is a great fit in Washington, which I do agree with. I mean, don't get me wrong. Mike McDaniel is perfect for me, but that doesn't mean there's not other great coordinators that are out there. And I mean, if you really want to go back, Brian Dable's got connections with Adam Peters from their New England days. We're going way back in the day for that. But, listen, Brian Dable was great when it comes to developing Josh Allen, making him a much more accurate passer, because before that, he wasn't. And remember, that was one of the biggest knocks on Josh Allen was his accuracy. That's not a knock as much, obviously, on Jaden Daniels, but that shows that there's this ability to develop quarterbacks. And that's really what this team's got to think about is, okay, who's going to be somebody that's going to help develop our quarterback, but also make sure that it's an offense that operates in a way that's going to be successful, because it's not a veteran quarterback that's there that has good habits and is set, and it's more of like making sure that they can work together. It's adding so much more in there, and there's a lot of names out there, and Mike LaFleur's been thrown around. He's the Rams offensive coordinator. That's another Kyle Shanahan coaching tree guy right there. Clay Kubiak, the offensive coordinator in San Francisco, is another one. I do actually really like Davis Webb as somebody to consider out there in Denver. He's the passing game coordinator, the quarterback's coach, and somebody that's really risen up the ranks. And I think he's done a great job with Bo Nix, especially with Jaden Daniels having a higher ceiling than Bo Nix. So you have to kind of look at all of these different things, David. There are other names out there. Mike McDaniel is perfect, but let's just say, though I want to speak this into existence, let's just say Mike McDaniel doesn't come to the Commanders. There are a bunch of other candidates out there that would still be a good fit for this team.
Yeah, no, there are good candidates out there. You know what I mean? And Ian Rappaport even reported Friday morning, that the team had also conducted several internal interviews. And I have to believe that at least one of those interviews was with David Blau. And Coach Blau, the assistant quarterbacks coach, is a guy that this organization loves. Jaden loves. He's a very smart offensive mind. There's been several really good play calls in the last 2 years that have been credited to David Blau himself specifically. So I think that he's got a great coaching path ahead of him. I don't know that I think this team is going to go, with a guy with that little amount of experience. But if they do, I mean, like, all these can go hand in hand, right? Like, say David Blau is the hire. He's going straight from assistant quarterbacks coach to offensive coordinator. That's quite a leap for a coach who's very young in his coaching career right now, which means that Dan Quinn's going to need to make sure he can be available to help David Blau navigate the waters through the season, because if he gets stuck in the mud and DQ is over here calling his defense, there's nobody to help David Blau out of that mud. So that means your defensive coordinator prospects now go to people who are very, very experienced, which I know they requested an interview with the Raiders DC, who is very, very experienced. So that could be a little bit of a pathway there. But like you said, to the offensive coordinator point, Brian Dable, I think, is very good. Listen, we give him a lot of credit for Josh Allen. He needs some credit for Daniel Jones too. And before everybody scoffs at me when I say that, don't forget, Daniel Jones' best year in the National Football League came under Coach Dable when he got that big contract that eventually led Joe Shane to not pay Saquon Barkley, not draft quality offensive linemen, and essentially torpedo everything that was being built at that time. The Giants were at one point a team on an upward trajectory. I don't put bad drafting on the coach per se, because Joe Shane is very much a GM who runs his own roster. Brian Dable didn't really have those options and selections. So to me, I give Brian Dable a pass on that. And remember that Daniel Jones had his best career, I would say. I know his passer rating in Indianapolis this year was better, but I'll also remind you that heading in, when he got injured, Daniel Jones, for the rest of the season, missed the remaining games for the Colts schedule. He was on a 5 interceptions in 5 game stretch. Opposing defenses were starting to figure out Daniel Jones in Indianapolis. And I think if that trend continues, the season he had in New York with Dable that got him paid and got Saquon sent to Philadelphia would be the best in his career. So Dable also deserves a little bit of credit for putting Daniel Jones in that situation. I know, again, like I said, the outcome, because of what the general manager did with it, didn't work right. When we're talking about just the coaches, Dable, Josh Allen, Dable made Daniel Jones better than he's ever been before. And Jackson Dart and that running game in New York looked pretty good till those guys got injured.
David, look, I got to say this. You mentioned Brian Dable and Daniel Jones. He did ball out when he needed to get that money. And he also kind of went back to what we thought he was after that. And it's exactly what you're saying. People understand his process and they understand how he's going through the offense. Same thing happening in Indianapolis. It just happened in the same season. Kind of feel like it's the same vibe that happens here in Washington as to why he's saying, hey, I need you to change the way you're doing some things, because people are picking up on what we're doing. So all of that stuff tied together. So maybe Dayball is not the best idea for 1 year, right? Maybe it is. Like, if you're just trying to get a new offense with a coach who can kind of change things up for a season, sure, maybe so, right? Then you can let him kind of go on to greener pastures. But I do think that Dan Quinn's going to want somebody who has some experience, right, that he can trust and say, hey, man, go handle some things for me. I got to go and check on the defense or go do something else. And then going back to David Blau, really good guy. I think I would love to have him stay in the quarterback coach position and then just be really involved in getting into the process of, calling the plays and designing all the plays. But if you bring in a Mike McDaniel, Mike's he's never been a quarterback's coach. Right, he's been a receivers coach. He's been a run game coordinator and then an offensive coordinator. So he's never necessarily been a quarterback's coach. So you still need to have somebody fit that position. Love to have Blau stay here for the familiarity of working with the player, and then he gets to learn. I mean, hell, frankly, if I was that coach, I would love to learn from what Mike McDaniel has and his being able to be connected to Kyle and all that. So it kind of makes sense to be like, hey, maybe I want to stay around. But it's going to be interesting what happens over these next couple of weeks, Nick. It's going to be real interesting.
Yeah, and again, there are other candidates, and there's pros and cons literally to all of them, and I think that's kind of what we've figured out here too, obviously. But there are choices, but it's really important that they figure this out and have somebody that's hopefully going to be around for a little bit. But that's tough. It's tough for coordinators. A good offensive coordinator tends to want to look for those head coaching jobs unless they decide, I don't really want to be a head coach anymore. I'd rather be a coordinator, which we've talked about plenty on this show, and it's hard to find that, but that is still a mindset maybe that you would hope to get like true continuity with this offense, but it's going to be difficult to get that. Who would benefit player-wise from a Mike McDaniel or any of these other offensive coordinators being in this offense moving forward. It's Commander Squad. The wild card round is here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action, because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel uses a profit boost pack that's waiting for them inside the app. So each day, you're going to see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts. So not one, you actually get a bunch of them, which gives you, hey, you get some more opportunities there. You open your profit boost pack first thing on game day, and you see what boost you want to apply. The boost lets you lean into game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. The boost gives you more juice on bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet something new. Every play feels bigger, and the boosts make your bets feel the way too. And when you make your picks, then you can apply your profit boost and go after even bigger payouts. While the playoffs get rolling, visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack for every NFL playoff day. Oh no! See, this is why it's better to watch YouTube and even do the audit, because somehow, some way, Anthony Armstrong has made himself not just a regular tinfoil hat, but a tinfoil hat that actually is over a real hat. So you see, I just like kind of piece mine together. Look, baby. I don't even know why you're wearing it, but I'll put on mine too. And we both can wear it together, because I want to know what the hell is like. I don't know what you're about to say, but you got a tinfoil hat. I got a tinfoil hat. What's your conspiracy theory?
I should have wore it last segment, because I just remember I was like, man, my ideal position would be that the old Mike McDaniel becomes available, and then boom, 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 all these keys start to fall into place. And you had the tinfoil hat, and I'm like, I need to get one of my own. Once I saw all those other things happen, it's unfortunate that he had lost his gig, but I was like, I got to get me a tinfoil hat. So I got one ready on the ready, Nick. David, he got his rice sushi hat.
David's reaching for something. I wonder if it's the chicken wing. There you go. What is going on? We have hit the off season clearly.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. No, man, this was what mine was. I had to put this on, but now you start to think about players that can benefit. That's where you were going. I think there's a lot of players that can benefit on the roster and off the roster. And obviously, Deebo Samuel is number one. I think that helps. And I think the reason I think Deebo benefits, obviously statistically, it helps you when it comes to re-signing players, right? Because if you already know what he's done in this system before, then you feel confident in giving him the money. One of the things that AP said in his press conference, and it was very, very poignant, he said, one of the mistakes that we've made in the past is giving a lot of money to guys that we didn't know anything about. Right. So he doesn't want to go back down that road. So if it's a free agent, or if it's somebody that a coach doesn't have a relationship with, it's going to be a 1 year, 2 year deal max. If it's somebody that he knows, it'll be a 3 year, 4 year deal with a little bit more money. But at least you don't have to guess what this guy is going to be. So Deebo is my first person that's going to benefit simply because of the familiarity. And just the trust, all right? From you think the trust that you got, especially as a player, man, I'd love to have that much trust, knowing that the GM, head coach, and the position coach is all on board.
First of all, I want to point out that because of the way I'm wearing this chicken wing hat in the frame, it kind of looks like a boneless wing, right? Which is an adult chicken nugget, because the wing, like the wing part is kind of cut off from the frame, but it also kind of looks like a Swami hat, right? It looks like a really weird predictive. So let me tie all this together, Nick. You're going to really enjoy this. You ready for this? What is another word for the term H-back in football? This is a little bit old school.
Okay.
Wing back. Wing. That's
right.
Wing back.
I'm over here saying zebra.
Could fill the wing back or H-back position for the Washington Commanders. None other than Ben Sinnott. I predict, gentlemen, with my chicken wing Swami hat, that if Mike McDaniel becomes the new offensive coordinator of the Washington Commanders, that Ben Sinnott is worth at least a backup tight end spot on your fantasy football roster. I'm going to take this up where it burns my head from that extra spicy take.
Too much heat coming from that one. I love that take. I love that take.
Yeah, mine's
because
falling off. We've gone through a few though.
yeah, the way that he has improved his blocking and shown a little bit more of a willingness to get into that, you kind of see a little bit of a use check. Isn't that what they said he looked like, a Kyle use check? Hey, how about you hit a guy that put him in that position? So I think I said yesterday, I was like, Ben Sinnott really could be a guy that jumps out as well. So that's a great one, Ben. Ben Sinnott. Fingers crossed that you get Mikey McDaniel in there for you and study everything that Kyle Juszczyk would do. Nick, who else you got? You got anybody?
I've got another spicy
I'm thinking
one too,
too.
Nick,
What
before
about
we get out of here, just to let you know?
do you want to give the spicy one now, or do we hold off on the spicy one?
will.
If you're gonna have to put a chicken wing back on.
I will. I absolutely will.
Let's go with it.
So listen here. Listen, I use so I am Asian. Some of you out there don't know that I am Asian. So I use the power of my roots to do some calculations. I calculated some things. And if you don't spit soda all over your computer, Nick, whatever that was.
Yeah, I almost did. We're going to lose the stream.
So I did some calculating. And listen, projections are always dangerous because, Anthony Armstrong gets, 13 catches for X amount of yards. And if he had 30 catches, it could have been this amount of yards. You're relying on Anthony to produce the same amount of yards, even with the increased attention, right? So they're always a little bit dangerous. But let's talk projections here. With that understood that they can be dangerous, let's get some projections here. If you were to project Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt's production, even in the we all don't understand why Cliff Kingsbury won't run the football offense in 2025, to similar type skill set running backs who did get the amount of burn that we would like to see Bill get. If you do the same for Chris Rodriguez to similar type backs, and you find other teams that have a duo of the similar type of back that Chris Rodriguez and Bill are together, and you project them to similar workloads, you end up with 383 touches combined. This is combined. 1,746 yards and 18 touchdowns, which is comparative to David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, Jahmyr Gibbs, much better receiver proven than Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is right now. That is the big differentiator. We're talking about ground game here, but when you talk about putting two backs that with the limited opportunity they did get, were able to produce at a rate that is commensurate to those two backs with Mike McDaniel, who the running backs he had in Miami don't get near the clout that those backs in Detroit get. Yet the Miami Dolphins have the fourth best rushing attack in yards per carry. And here's the great thing for Commanders fans. They did it with a quarterback who the last 2 years, Tua Tagovailoa, has set new career lows in rushing attempts. Why? Because they've tried to protect him from that fourth serious concussion that's going to cost him the rest of his career. So they've had to whittle down how much they allow him to use his feet, which obviously impacts the offense overall. So you're talking about an offense that everybody knows your quarterback is not running the ball really hardly at all. Yet he's still able to generate, like, how many people that aren't Dolphins fans can tell me who the second running back is in Miami off the top of their head? Not a lot of them. Yet he's still producing the top 4 rushing attack per carry in the National Football League. Again, Bill, Chris, their projection equal to or similar to David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm not saying that's what they would be, but it just shows you the potential there. And it just kind of doubles down on my opinion that I'll talk about more in the offseason here. I don't think this team needs to go hard after a free agent running back. I don't think they need to go high in the draft after another running back. I think you bring in Rachaad White to be that third part of this beast, and you let Mike McDaniel go to work with what you already got and a guy in Rachaad who can catch the ball and pass block.
Man, you cooking with that. Go ahead, Nick.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, it makes sense given the fact we know they want to run the football more. We saw some situations where they completely abandoned the run. Cliff abandoned the run. And there was opportunities there for them to continue to ride that thing in certain games. And you go, well, this makes perfect sense. And we've watched this Dolphins offense over the years with Mike McDaniel there. And they had a lot of success scoring and running the football, putting up big numbers and running the football. And it's dynamic backs, guys that can do a bunch of different things. And listen, it makes total sense. Now, Chris Rodriguez is a free agent, though. I don't know what the price would be. I can't imagine. Free agent. So he is restricted. Okay, so that was my one question is like, what does that it would make sense for him to come back unless some team goes and gives some sort of offer that, they don't want to match or whatever the case is. But I listen, I think all three of us certainly here are all Chris Rodriguez fans. You keep Bill, you keep Chris Rodriguez, you add a third back, and you've got yourself an offense that's going to really fit the Mike McDaniel way of doing things. And listen, Brian Dable is another one that we've thrown out there. Certainly they ran the football in Buffalo when he was there too. And it's not like that he's going to abandon the. So there are certainly other opportunities here. But again, the Mike McDaniel thing, it just loops back to it, David, is that it makes sense. And when you look at all of the things that you just pointed out, I mean, the potential is very high. And I think that's what's really important here. And I saw this in the YouTube comments actually here from Jamal Fair. I'm trying my best with some of your username guys, but this is all we can do. Where do the Commanders stack up as leading spots against teams like the Ravens and the Falcons? I think it's the third or fourth best open seat. Now, you're obviously looking at what weapons you have offensively. You're looking at the age of these players, the ceiling of some of those players. So there's a lot of things to certainly factor in there. If I'm an offensive coordinator that wants full control over, molding the offense and the talent that's there, Washington gives you a little bit more in terms of the money that you can spend, obviously, in free agency, a younger quarterback in Jaden Daniels that still has a lot of growth if you want to mold a younger quarterback, and the potential with some of these backs in the backfield and a really good number one receiver in Terry McLaurin. So the thing with the Ravens for me, and it's kind of what you brought up a little, Anthony, is like, how much more Derrick Henry do we really have? I mean, I know we talk about running backs falling off a lot and feels like he's never going to do it, but at some point, Derrick Henry is not going to be the same Derrick Henry. You're not going to get 150 yards rushing from him where 95 of it comes in the second half. I mean, is Keaton Mitchell a guy that you want as your number one back? He's more of a speed back. So, the one thing I will say is Atlanta does have a lot of talent. That would be the one that I would elevate above Washington in the sense that Atlanta has multiple backs that can do a lot of different things if you were Mike McDaniel or Brian Dable looking at an offense. But then the question becomes quarterback. Washington wins that battle, Anthony, there when it comes to quarterback because there's more questions around Michael Penix Jr. Because we haven't seen him elevate his game the way we saw Jaden in his rookie years. So there's a balancing act no matter what and how many boxes you check and what matters to you most when you're making these choices.
I think you can look at this thing a couple different ways, Nick. If you look on the field, yes, I love the fact that I get to work with JD5. I got a whole bunch of cash that we can use in cap space, and a GM that makes some smart decisions. You hear a whole bunch about Dan Quinn. I think you got to think off the field. You look about the relationship with Dan Quinn, how he's able to attract a lot of veterans. And it seems as if the organization is in much better health than what it was in the past. On the field, I think you do have some good talent. There's definitely some unproven guys. The quarterback position in Atlanta, I think you almost have enough. You may have enough out of Bijan Robinson and everybody outside that maybe Kirk can get it done. Just be like, hey, man, just manage the show and just, divvy the ball around. May not have to deal with Penix. So that could be interesting, but there's been so much change down there, so you have to understand like how quick is that change going to happen. I know people talk about Dan Quinn being on the hot seat, but if I'm going to go work for a head coach that's on the hot seat, but I got a lot of things in the cupboard to work with, that's a benefit for me. Like if I got 1 year to just lay it all on the line, you mentioned Brian Daboll, like I can do that and I still have a JD5 at my disposal. I have a Terry McLaurin at my disposal. I think this job ranks a little bit higher, right? Like if I'm already like I ain't got but one chance to do it anyways, give me a couple of guys that have been there and they've had some success, and I think I'll be successful, David.
Let me tell you something. The only thing that the Ravens and the Falcons have over the offensive coordinator job for a guy like Mike McDaniel is the fact that they're head coaching positions. And that's it. And that's assuming that they are head coaching positions, because I know a lot of people in Baltimore want Brian Flores to come be the head coach, Mike McDaniel be his offensive coordinator. Here's the reason, even as an offensive coordinator, just alone, the Commander's job is head and shoulders above the Ravens job, and head, knees, and toes, shoulders above the Atlanta Falcons job. And I'm going to tell you why right here, because in all three situations, you are tied to a quarterback. Bottom line, you are tied to a quarterback. Like Jaden's not going anywhere in Washington. Lamar's not going anywhere in Baltimore. And guess what? Michael Penix, he's not going anywhere yet in Atlanta. The problem with Atlanta is they're also an organization that has just proven that if you can't get this thing figured out in a year, you might be back on the streets next season, right? So Michael Penix coming off his third torn ACL, and this is nothing against Michael Penix, okay? But Michael Penix Jr. coming off his third torn ACL. He's torn his ACL in his right knee twice. which means, and I'm not a doctor, I'm not his surgeon, but just going off of general medical practice, that means that the patellar tendon has been used to repair his ACL once, then that broke. So the second time they go into your quad or your hamstring, one of the two, they go into your quad or your hamstring. Either way, that's bad. That's bad news. Now your other ACL has been torn once. So that means they're going into your patellar tendon to take from that to replace this. So you got 2 compromised patellar tendons and 1 compromised hamstring or quad on top of just the fact that this is how this dude plays football. So that's a problem for me if I'm a coach. If I'm hitching my career progression to a team that is not going to let me spend another first-round pick on a quarterback, because my other option outside of that is Kirk Cousins. I'm sorry, but Kirk ain't been Kirk since he beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and yelled at all the reporters. So that's a bad situation as far as I'm concerned. If you're the head coach, there's only one way you're winning, and that's with dominant defense. Now, the Atlanta Falcons defense allowed less than 24 points per game this season. Let's put that in context. If the Commanders defense was allowing under 24 points per game this season, this would be an 8-win team. Just as is, even with all the injuries, even with everything going on, there would have been an 8-win team, and Cliff Kingsbury still has a job, right? So that's that's what Atlanta was dealing with. That shows you where their offense was last year, even with Bijan Robinson. I love Bijan Robinson. Drake London has all the potential in the world. I think Kyle Pitts could use from a Kevin Stefanski or a Mike McDaniel type of coach, and he would take off as well. But the bottom line is the quarterback is the most important position on the field for a reason. Even with those talented players, this Atlanta Falcons offense could not take advantage of having a mid-level defense that would have got the Washington Commanders offense 8 stinking wins this season. That's how bad that Falcons offense was holistically. Okay? That's why the Atlanta Falcons job sucks. The Baltimore Ravens job sucks because this franchise literally just put the desires, wants, and welfare of their quarterback over their head coach. And we've seen plenty of teams do this before. But make no mistake about it, if you take that Baltimore Ravens job, you work for Lamar Jackson. Like, that's what this team just did, is they just put Lamar over the coach. Same thing that the Jets did with Aaron Rodgers. Same thing we've seen other teams do. Sometimes it works. I would say, Anthony, most of the time it doesn't work. I know the quarterback's the most important player on the field, but when you put the player over the staff and the process, I think that's dangerous waters to travel through. And I don't think I would take either of those jobs over the Washington Commanders job, because yes, you're tied to Jaden, but you're tied to Jaden, who is learning, who you are expected to come in here and mold and help grow. So your influence is expected to be just as important as that quarterback's influence, and your influence is going to help shape what the roster does moving forward, because that's who Adam Peters is.
You know, I think if you're going into Baltimore, you got to come in there with the right. You got to kind of understand what they already have going on. You got to understand what's on the menu, and you just have to bring just enough change to get them to have success, because that's something that they need right now. That's the only reason they made that change, because there's more life, if you will, of Lamar Jackson's career and what he can do than I guess what they were feeling they were going to get from John Harbaugh. You know, whatever the messaging was, it just kind of must have been, just falling on deaf ears, but it's frustrating whenever you would see, and I joked about this where I was like, man, they're acting like these are playoff games, how they would drop some of those games during the season. I'm like, they usually wait till the offseason to do that. So obviously something was wrong. We'll see if that ends up being the right decision. Lamar's never been a guy that comes across as a troublemaker or anything like that you can't work with, but hey, we'll see what happens, right? It always comes down to the record book and seeing what happens on Sundays. So we'll see. I'm thinking that they're going to come out on top, but you never know, man. You never know, Nick.
All right, it's not just the offensive side of the football. They've also got to figure out what the hell they're going to do for defensive coordinator. Oh, and, kind of revamp an entire defense. That was a massive, massive issue for the season. We look at defensive coordinator potential candidates next here on Commander Squad. And nobody knows your money goals better than you. Robinhood puts you in control of your money with tools that work as hard as you do, locking in on every opening, beating your PR, beating it again. Channel that drive into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Trade stocks and ETFs, options, futures, and crypto, all on one platform. You can now build and execute your own trades from a desktop with Robinhood's Legends Advanced tools, or take advantage of the new Robinhood strategies with a tailored portfolio managed by a team of experts. You expect more from yourself, expect more from your money. Get started today at Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Your money, your move. All right, Anthony Armstrong, David Harrison, Nick Ashew. Look, we know that offensive coordinator is massively polarizing and important to this team, but there's also a defensive coordinator position that is certainly open for this team. And whomever they hire can't force guys to tackle properly or, not get beat in coverage and not get decimated by injuries. There's a lot of things that are going to have to be addressed more on the defensive side of the football. But it does have to start with defensive coordinator because that's philosophy and strategy and, building that side of the football. And there is a lot of names out there that are really, really good names for this team if they're looking to upgrade when it comes to defensive coordinator. Raheem Morris is one of the first one that comes to my mind after getting fired by the Falcons. Jeff Ulbrich, who was the defensive coordinator already for the Falcons, is one that's been thrown around. I know a lot of people, and I've seen in the YouTube comments a lot here. Al Harris, the Bears secondary coach. Who, man, people love Al Harris. Patrick Graham has already had an interview with the team. He's the Raiders defensive coordinator. Brian Flores. I would love Brian Flores in DC, given what he's done with that Vikings defense. These are some of the names, but not even all of the names here. And it does feel to me like this could be a wider net that's cast defensively versus offensive coordinator. And I may be totally wrong with this, David, but it does kind of feel like if I had to guess, I would guess that offensive coordinator is settled before defensive coordinator for this team.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like that's the it's by design, right? I think that the offense is kind of where this thing has multiple paths it can go down, whereas I feel like Dan Quinn probably kind of knows where he wants to go down, what travel he wants to path on the defense, and kind of what he wants that to look like. And I have personally said that I hope it's not just let's find another fire zone cover 3 dude. I would rather than bring in a guy from a different type of church. And truthfully, I'm actually, as soon as we're done here, going to dive deep into some of these defensive coordinator candidates like Patrick Graham and kind of find out what school they come from and kind of how they do things. But no matter what, when you look at the names that they're tied to and Graham is really the only one that we actually have confirmation of them having any interest in right now, but they come from teams, they come from squads that are known for generating pressure. They're known for getting after the quarterback. And even with all the Raiders struggles, like Max Crosby still continues to be a problem. And listen, I know when the whole Max Crosby walking out the building thing started, like a lot of people were like, hey, go trade for him. And, I have a feeling he would probably be okay with playing for Coach Graham again. So if Graham comes here and Max Crosby wants out of Vegas and Malcolm Kuntz is a free agent, who knows? Maybe that's exactly what ends up happening. But either way, you're looking at coaches that have a history of figuring out how to get to the quarterback. The one thing about Ulbrich that I will tell everybody and kind of warn everybody against is the Atlanta Falcons have already declined one request to interview him because he still is under contract with the Atlanta Falcons. Just because Raheem Morris was fired doesn't excuse anything. Teams still have to request to interview him. And if they're lateral promotions or lateral jobs, which of course D coordinator is, the team has the right to block them. So the Falcons have already blocked one request. So it basically seems like until the head coach is hired and makes a decision on whether or not they're going to keep Ulbrich, probably going to see every request denied up until that point. So that's just something to remember. But yeah, Patrick Graham is intriguing. His interview is going to be interesting. And again, my hope, like I said, is just don't bring in just another dude that loves to run fire zone cover 3. Like fire zone cover 3 has its place in the game. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it doesn't, but let's mix a little bit of different seasoning in this thing. Let's merge some approaches. And again, let's circle it back to Mike McDaniel. Honestly, Mike McDaniel runs the kind of offense, comes from the school of Shanahan, and that's the school that's always given Dan Quinn's defense the worst trouble. So bringing in a Shanahan coach is certainly an attractive option as well.
I think if you're thinking about just, how the league is going, you want to get on the front edge, at least on the offensive side. On the defensive side, Dan Quinn mentioned turnovers, right? The lack of turnovers, the turnover margin was something that bothered him. So whoever is going to be able to create turnovers in their own unique way and how they teach it and coach it, that's who I think you're going to look at. Al Harris is a big favorite of mine. Obviously been with Dan Quinn. He's talked wonderfully about him, about how he would love to go work with Dan Quinn. But obviously he's still in the playoffs with the Chicago Bears. 33 turnovers for that team. He's got that young fella, Nashawn Wright. He's got more turnovers by himself than a lot of NFL teams. So he's getting after the ball. I'm looking just at some other teams up there. The Jacksonville Jaguars have 31 turnovers on the year. The Houston Texans have 29, Steelers, Rams, Seahawks. So there are a lot of teams up there. Atlanta Falcons sit at 23. So I think those teams probably have some people. I don't know the specific names, but I could see them trying to go and find out, hey, what do you do to create these turnovers? And how can you implement this over here? Because that's what we're missing, especially if they're able to get a pass rusher like they're looking for in the draft or in free agency. These teams that are all listed up at the top all have pretty good pass rushers. So, hey, those things tie together, and they're trying to fix some things with the defensive coordinator first, Nick. I think they're on the right track so far.
Yeah, and look, we throw a lot of names out there, but, you know, as David pointed out, it's true. Like, there is still a level of availability that you have to have, and it's hard when you're trying to poach somebody that is in the same position in another organization, because all they got to say is, not happening, and that's it. Like, I throw Brian Flores out there, but there's a good chance that, you know, he stays. I think Brian Flores is one of the best defensive minds in the NFL. We've watched what he's done with the Vikings, but, you know, whoever they hire, it's also going to have to come in, and they will in these interviews, with a plan of how you're going to make this defense better beyond just scheme and philosophy. It's got to be players or types of players. And we know pass rush is the most important thing, but that's not the only thing with this defense. I mean, yeah, you can never have enough pass rushers, but they need help in a lot of different areas, and they just have to get younger too. And there's a lot to be done defensively with this team, because, like, if you look at the playoffs right now, the AFC is really what stands out to me, because you've got a team like the Patriots, a team like the Broncos, and those are the two because they're the top of the AFC. They're with young quarterbacks, they're inexperienced in the playoffs, but they have elite defenses. And there are times once you get to the postseason where offense isn't going to be your main thing that works, right? Sometimes it's the weather, the conditions, sometimes it's the travel, or things just aren't clicking, or whatever the case is. Having a defense that can bail you out in moments, especially in, you know, tighter, more physical games, and there's more pressure, whatever the case is, that's something that really, really matters. And David, I know it's a cliche, but, like, defense does win championships still, and we've seen that plenty of times in the NFL. For this offense to have a defense that they know they can count on, that's going to help in moments where if things aren't clicking offensively for them early, the defense is keeping them in games. That's something that they have to build. As glamorous as offense is, and as much as I love watching teams put up 40 points, you got to also have a unit on the other side of the football that can make some stops. Otherwise, it doesn't matter, because all it is a shootout, and it's who's the first to 50, and it just gets absolutely out of control. Or you fall behind early in games, like the first quarter, and you have no shot the rest of the way.
Yeah, no, 100%. And truthfully, I think in a big picture kind of way, it's easier to build a killer defense than it is to find that killer quarterback. I just don't think there's a lot of killer quarterbacks out there. And the defense, the good news is, if you're short this year, you can replace a couple pieces. You know, you can go one piece at a time, whereas a quarterback, it's kind of all or nothing. You either got it or you don't got it. And there's not like you can just, you know, he doesn't have the arm, so let's just get him a new arm. You can't really do that kind of stuff. And when you look at, you know,
not yet,
we'll go back to Coach Graham, right? Again, he's the only one that we really have solidified information on right now. So I'll kind of stick in that wheelhouse for right now. But the pass rush in Las Vegas under him, he survived multiple head coaching changes in Vegas, and he's been their D coordinator. Like, that speaks volumes about him. The fact that he's got guys that are still out there, even with all the struggles that franchise had, and they're going out there, they want to put it all on the line. Not just Max Crosby. I dropped Malcolm Kuntz's name. He's someone that I mean, honestly, regardless of who joins this staff, I'm going to put Malcolm Kuntz on my free agent target list. He's got about 8.5 sacks in 2023, ended up injured and missed all of 2024. Was supposed to be a really big part of their plan there. They get a new guy, ends up stepping up. So it comes back here in 2025, kind of more of a rotational guy, really didn't get back in that starting lineup. But even as a rotational pass rusher, still ends up with 4.5 sacks, which is what, second or third on the Washington Commanders team this year. So if you're getting Dorrance Armstrong back, if you bring Von Miller back to be that 3-point shooter, I wouldn't hate seeing Jacob Martin brought back. You bring Malcolm Kuntz in, and he can be that other edge, you know, pass rusher out there opposite of Dorrance Armstrong. Go out there and draft a young guy to develop behind the scenes. Maybe you even bring Dietrich Wise Jr. back, who I can tell you, just as much as Von Miller has been saying he wants to come back, Dietrich wants to come back. He's a better edge setter, I would say, than Malcolm Kuntz is. So you have kind of a duo there. Dietrich Wise and Malcolm Kuntz man the one end, Dorrance Armstrong on the other, Von Miller, Jacob Martin coming in there with a rookie. That's a pretty sexy beginning to the edge of your front seven. And depending on what happens at linebacker with Bobby, and I know a lot of people don't want Bobby to come back, whatever, but depending on what happens there, Deron Payne, et cetera, like, that can turn your defense around to a certain extent, because the reason we saw this secondary in 2024 not get abused as much as it did in 2025 was the pass rush. The pressure was getting to quarterbacks. They weren't able to take advantage of those secondary players as much. So that alone, before we even get into talking about upgrades in the secondary, upgrade your secondary. And that's just kind of the quick way that a new coordinator, some new pieces can upgrade your defense before you've even gotten beyond the first level of trying to do so.
You add some dogs up front, some people that go out there and hunt. That does lift a whole lot of things. And I think mainly defense is a lot about mentality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you walk in and you see a Brian Flores and they talk about how rough and how scruffy he is. That's the type of mentality I need from my defensive coordinator. I ain't here for pleasantries. I'm here to get after the quarterback. That's what he needs to resonate across that defensive line and linebackers and with the play calling, right? I mean, you see how happy Trevon Diggs is to get back with Micah Parsons because he understands what his pressure can do for his ability to intercept passes and make things happen on the back end. So I think once whatever secondary is out there, and if the pass rush is hitting and they have some trust and understanding what's going on with that defensive coordinator, right? There has to be trust. We talk about continuity on the offensive side. If there's no trust from the defensive play caller, that is not going to look pretty on the field. I remember hearing, I ain't gonna say who, but we were in a suite. And they were talking about, man, you know how many calls we had to change when Hazlitt brought it in? They were like, man, nah, we ain't running that. We're not running that. What y'all want to run? And they made the change in the huddle, right? And sometimes it would hit, sometimes it wouldn't. But they like, coach, we're not running this again. We ran this 6 times in a row. And fortunately, that's why you keep a Bobby Wagner, because he knows the whole daggum defense. And he could say, hey, yeah, coach calls 0. We ain't going to run 0. It's not working. Let's do this instead. So that's why you keep somebody like Bobby around. He can get you in and out of trouble. He's coach on the field. But, yeah, this is going to be a fun offseason for sure. I think this is going to be a lengthy process for this defensive coordinator position, because I think there's some defensive coordinators that are, like I say, some of the teams I listed, they're on staffs right now. So I think it's just going to be a nice, patient thing. But with AP, is not going to stop his process of selecting players, right? Since they already know how they're going to analyze them, they know who they're going to pick, right? They don't need to wait on a defensive coordinator to come in and say, oh, I need my guy, I want to change to it. It's like, no, you're not changing the scheme. You're not changing the personnel. This is who you get. What are you going to do with it? So I think this is going to be a little bit of they're going to take their time and make sure they get the right fit. And then it's going to fit in seamlessly. That's how I feel they envision it happening.
Yeah, Bobby Wagner is going to be a polarizing topic all offseason, but there is certainly still value to this team. It's just not in pass coverage, as everybody knows. All right, it's one thing to say what they should do, but what will the Commanders do? It's Commanders Squad. All right, let's be real. Managing your finances can get overwhelming between subscriptions you forgot about. We've all been there. Bills that keep going up and trying to figure out where all your money actually goes each month. It's easy to feel like you're losing control, and who has time to track every transaction or hunt down hidden fees that are everywhere? Well, that's where Rocket Money comes in, the personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower bills so you can actually grow your savings. And Rocket Money just shows you really paying what you're paying for. That's one of the biggest things where you just go, oh, wow, that subscription, I completely forgot about that thing. It tracks every single subscription. It lets you cancel them right in the app with just a few taps. No more hunting down customer service numbers or, trying to fight when they don't actually want to let you cancel anything. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join it. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, Anthony Armstrong, David Harrison, Nick Ashew. The Commanders, we know, should go from offensive coordinator. We'll start with that. I think we all at least agree Mike McDaniel, a great choice. I'd be okay with a Brian Daboll in there, and there's some other names we certainly listed, like Mike LaFleur, and you go that could certainly have that potential. But I think it comes down to now, what will happen? And I know we're sort of closing our eyes and picturing a future that doesn't actually exist, or looking into a crystal ball, if you want to use that analogy. It's a lot of different things here. I'm a little bit, I think because there is such a desire for me to see Mike McDaniel as the offensive coordinator, that I'm a little worried that if I don't speak it into existence constantly, that we're not going to get the result that we want. I would say that Mike McDaniel, I'm going to make the prediction that Mike McDaniel does end up being the offensive coordinator, with the backup being Brian Daboll. David.
So this means nothing in reality, but I'm going to say it anyway because I don't know. It's just what I want to say. But
Mhm.
last offseason, or not last offseason, 2 off seasons ago, I came into this whole thing and I said, you know what, man, I just know it in my bones that Adam Peters is going to be the general manager of this team. And he became the general manager of this team. And then I was like, I kind of like a few guys to be the head coach. I don't really know which one is my favorite personally. And I think there's several options. And, you know, we ended up with Dan Quinn, which I appreciate now because getting to know him as a coach has been really fun. I feel it in my bones that Mike McDaniel is going to be the offense coordinator of this team. The way that I felt Adam Peters was going to be the GM, I feel Mike McDaniel is going to be the coordinator of this team, to the point where, you know, if it's somebody else, as much as I like Brian Daboll, if it were to be somebody else, and I like David Blau, but if we're being honest here, because I see a lot of people like David Blau would be perfect, David Blau would be great, David Blau this. Can anybody tell me what scheme David Blau would run? Can anybody tell me what kind of offense David Blau would construct?
We don't know at all.
Yeah,
It
he just disappeared for a second there.
right? So that could happen.
He just popped off. His screen is blurry now. I mean, that was the ultimate tease right there. That's what I call that.
Know.
That's just the tease. we don't know. Nobody knows to the point.
Right.
Or
it's
David knows, and he's been silenced.
Oh, you gotta subscribe. You gotta subscribe for that content. I see you, David.
That's exactly what it is.
He's still on mute, though. We're gonna let.
And so I got kicked out for a minute. Is what happened.
Okay, but I closed the tab earlier too. So hey, we having
we had a rough day with technical things.
Well, my thing with I don't remember. I don't know how much you guys got.
Swindle says that Blau cut your Wi-Fi. By the way, that's perfect.
Yeah, Blau cut my Wi-Fi.
David Blau cut your Wi-Fi.
I love David Blau, and Mike, every conversation I've had with David Blau has been amazing. It's been great, and I think he's a great communicator. Him and Jaden get along beautifully. All these reasons why I think David Blau absolutely is a coach on the rise. Here's a conversation I've not had with David Blau. Hey, coach, on 2nd and 8, what percentage of those plays are you going to throw the ball versus what percentage of those plays are you going to run the ball? If you're going to run the ball, is it going to be an outside zone? Is it going to be an inside gap? If you're going to throw the ball, are you looking short? Let's get a few yards set up 3rd and short. Or are you going for it all? Or are you going to take a shot and try to catch the defense playing aggressive towards the line? These are the things that matter in a coordinator. And I don't know where David Blau stands on those things. So the excitement for David Blau is 100% potential, which I totally get. Here's my thing. How many people were calling for Dan Quinn's head this year? If he goes with David Blau, because I've even seen some comments, guys, from some fans who are like, sometimes you got to take a shot. Go with David Blau. I'm like, okay, dude. In December of 2026, if this doesn't go well with David Blau, are you going to say, well, you took the shot, I don't blame you, keep you around for another year? Or are you going to be calling for Dan Quinn to get fired? So if Dan Quinn's seat is even a degree above warm, I just don't see you going with a guy that has no experience on the offensive side of the ball because of the risk that it opens up. And again, I love David Blau, but also there seems to be this assumption that if David Blau doesn't get the offensive coordinator job here, I know that he's got an interview request with the Detroit Lions, but like there seems to be this assumption that if he doesn't get this job, he's gone. And like if you hire a different offensive coordinator, David Blau is just going to leave. I don't know where that comes from either, because I don't think that's necessarily the case. Now, it's certainly possible that depending on the OC that comes in, maybe they have their own quarterback coach they want or whatever it is. It's possible, but the assumption seems to be that it's just a foregone conclusion that David Blau is either the OC or he's not the OC. And if he is the OC, he's going to be great. And it's just the weirdness of the offseason to me that I've just noticed. But yeah, Mike McDaniel is the guy that I think it's going to be.
We got to grasp onto something, right? We got to find some drama in DC, man. I mean, like I said, I love David Blau. I mean, Carrollton, Texas kid, went to Carrollton Creekview, which is a rival school of mine. Much younger than me, so I did not play against David Blau. But yeah, he's from here, and he played for Detroit. So I remember somebody said, "Who is David Blau?" He has NFL quarterback experience. He started a couple of games. I think it was like Monday Night Football or something like that. So he's played in the league, and when you think about it, he's been underneath Ben Johnson. He's offensively. He's listened to his play calling, and he's been in that system a little bit. So he got a little bit of that sprinkle in there. What would he run? Who knows? But I would tell you this much: if my job is on the line, if I'm on the hot seat like everybody trying to say it is, I'm not rolling the dice. I am not taking a shot. All right. Yeah, y'all can personally guarantee my contract. Sure, that's fine. That's fine. If I take the shot, y'all guarantee my money. But if I'm Dan Quinn and I'm on the hot seat, I got to get somebody that I can trust. I got to get the best person, and that's why Mike McDaniel makes the most sense. Like you have to even this much, there can be a point to where the offense looks great, defense looks or the defense is good, and then for whatever reason he loses the locker room. I'm just gonna say maybe, right? I don't see it happen, but it could. There could be something where you're like, this is the common denominator that we just have to make a change from the top guy. And if it works out that way, then so be it, right? And then you'll have your opportunity to advance or, promote whatever person that you want to from that point or bring them in. But I think it's Mikey McDaniel. It has to be. It's always been. Weirdly enough, if you're gonna script the season and script the game, you might as well script the offseason coaching carousel too, Nick. Let us get Mikey McDaniel so this could be nice and exciting. And then we'll probably get Hard Knocks in the offseason. And, man, it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Yeah, listen, I think we all agree Mike McDaniel is the guy that most people seem to want. I know there's some other candidates that are being thrown around. So if we keep speaking this into existence, the next time we do a Commander Squad, maybe Mike McDaniel will be the head coach or the offensive coordinator, and that's what the podcast is going to be about, and no longer speculating. But if that's not the case, we got a whole offseason with the draft, with free agency, potential trades, coaching staffs to be turned around, everything. We're keeping you covered on this. And, of course, Locked On Commanders with David Harrison. He's going to have you every day with that as well. Like and subscribe and give us a follow on all of the socials here on Commander Squad.